But in the end, I believe Babylon was a far easier mistress to enter than she was to leave.
This year, Oliver Stone's 2004 epic film Alexander turns 20 years old. As such, I think it's the perfect time to look back on this film with a fresh gaze and a mind open to reinterpretation. Oliver Stone, known for his films focusing on modern American history and recent events, had been planning to create an epic film in the style of classics such as Spartacus and Ben-Hur for many years before filming Alexander. He found the story of the world's greatest conqueror intensely appealing to him and, after securing a sizable budget and a group of excellent filmmakers and quality actors, he set about to produce his first, and sadly only, historical epic film. Sadly for Oliver and his fans, the film, which released between November 2004 and January 2005, was met with poor reviews, with reviewers often reporting feeling bored and confused whilst watching, and it went on to make a net loss for the studio. But now, 20 years and 3 director's cuts later, I think it's time to take another look at the often misunderstood film. Firstly, let's address the criticisms of this film. By far the main criticism, and one I think personally is the most accurate, is the critique of the way the story is told. For some reason, perhaps to show how the events of his childhood and youth would affect Alexander's actions throughout his life, or perhaps to start with the action scene of the impressive Battle of Gaugamela, Stone decided to tell the story through a series of flashbacks and flash-forwards, linked by the narration of the elderly Ptolemy, one of Alexander's companions, played by the great Anthony Hopkins. I actually found Ptolemy's narration to be very insightful and often useful in tying various aspects of the often disparate film together, and he has some very good lines. The problem lies not with his narration, but rather with the repeated flashbacks. They serve to interrupt the flow and story. Epics should be one big journey from start to finish, whereas Alexander often feels like a loose collection of clips shown out of order. The result is that we are never truly able to appreciate each scene. The Battle of Gaugamela is epic, but we don't really have any emotional investment in it. While it's fine for people like me who have an interest in Alexander and know about his life and the history surrounding it, for a regular viewer I can imagine that it was very disorienting and confusing. They must have wondered, who on earth are any of these people, and why should I care about the outcome of this random battle? For instance, the scene before the battle where Alexander is explaining to his companions the plan for the upcoming battle. I think it could certainly come across as very confusing to the average viewer, as it essentially consists of Alexander listing a bunch of names whilst pointing at various men. This is no way to introduce characters, as the audience would find it very difficult to remember even half of the names, let alone have any feelings for them. In an epic, each scene ought to flow on from the one previously. We ought to watch Alexander grow from a clingy young boy into a battle-hardened conqueror, and watch his relationships with his companions change over time. Instead, thanks to the non-chronological order, we jump from city to city, continent to continent, and even years and decades into the past and future. This, in my opinion, is the main reason why this film receives such a poor reception. If placed into chronological order, however, I find the film becomes much better and much more enjoyable almost instantaneously. The other problem that some people had with this film was the acting. Whilst I admit that there are a few cringy moments, most notable being the frequent shouting and crying, which I felt came across as too melodramatic and annoying, on the whole I felt the actors and actresses did a fine job. While some have attacked Colin Farrell for his portrayal of Alexander, I personally think he did a great job. He certainly was passionate about the role, and that does indeed show on screen. To be fair, from now on, when I imagine Alexander, I imagine Colin Farrell. Angelina Jolie, likewise, despite her strong fake accent, does a fine job as Alexander's overbearing yet ruthless mother. Some have said that she was too young for the role and that there was too little of an age gap between mother and son, but I don't think this is fair. In the ancient world, women were often far closer to their children's age than they are now, and the makeup artist did a great job in aging Farrell down in the scenes he has with her. Hopkins does an expectedly great job as the aging Ptolemy, whilst Jared Leto also performs well. My favourite performance comes from Val Kilmer, however, who does a genuinely great job as Alexander's one-eyed father Philip, the man who built Macedon's power and enabled Alexander to take one of the greatest armies yet assembled and march into Persia. Some people also attack the film for showing the Macedonians speak in Irish accents. Indeed, most of the actors were chosen from Ireland. However, I find this attack completely unfounded. I think the use of Irish accents was a very clever way to differentiate them from mainstream Greeks, and it also provides a welcome change from the traditional use of Southern English accents in film. Now that we've gotten the problems out of the way, let's focus on why I personally have grown to really like this film. Firstly, it's very beautiful. The cinematography is often stunning, with some beautiful costumes, vast, majestic sets, and epic battle scenes. The film often seems more like a sprawling work of art rather than a film, and perhaps in some sense it is more of a piece of artwork than a motion picture. It's certainly not very fist pumping action oriented, which has led some to say that it's boring and lifeless, but I disagree. I think its sober, more detached and analytical style makes it truly stand out and enhances the beauty of it. My favourite aspect of the film, however, is its incredible soundtrack by the legendary Greek composer Vangelis, who sadly died back in 2022. The mixture of an orchestra and electronic music works really well, and it's ridiculous to me that some reviewers gave this soundtrack a low rating. In my opinion, his soundtrack for Alexander is one of his greatest works, filled with some truly incredible tracks, which are beautiful, awe-inspiring, and goosebumps-inducing, yet also deeply moving on a personal level. One of my favourite songs is We're Going Home, from the unreleased soundtrack. I find this track deeply moving, yet it also relates to the final aspect of this film that I find so fascinating and wonderful, and that is the strong, immensely powerful undercurrent of sadness and tragedy that seems to lie beneath practically every scene. I don't know if I'm the only one here, or if there are others who share this view, but the most comparable thing to this movie is, in my opinion, a beautiful sunset. It's very stunning and beautiful, yet also deeply sad and emotional. This film just feels like a beautiful sunset. The soundtrack helps to convey this sense of beautiful tragedy, with its majestic but sad tunes. Whilst he conquered basically the whole known world by the age of only 32, we rarely, if ever, see Alexander truly happy, nor do we ever really see him in the company of friends. And perhaps therein lies the key to this desperate sadness and tragedy that I feel is pervasive in this film. Alexander is desperately lonely. As the saying goes, it's lonely at the top, and this is very true for Alexander. No one around him is his equal, or even his friend. Everyone is either terrified of him, resents him, or despises him. He has no one really to talk to, and the closest thing he has to friends are his two homosexual partners, one a boyhood friend, perhaps his only friend, the other a Persian eunuch. From his troubled childhood as an only son to the wastes of Bactria, where one can imagine a lonely Alexander standing by himself on a remote mountain, viewing the sun set over the endless grasslands that the Greeks thought were the ends of the earth, the film conveys the beautiful glory and tragedy of Alexander's life in a stunningly excellent way, one which deeply moves me. To conclude, whilst I usually detest it when directors and filmmakers talk down to or lecture their audiences, I think Oliver Stone's remarks about the audiences being, in a sense, too stupid to understand this film are actually right. The first time I watched this film, I came away with mixed feelings and was prepared to give it maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. But the more I think about it and watch it and listen to its incredible soundtrack, the more I begin to truly appreciate the passion and, quite frankly, genius that went into making this epic film. In that sense, it's aged like a fine wine. The more I watch it, the closer I get to truly understanding it, and in that sense, it is my view that Oliver Stone's Alexander is the epitome of the misunderstood masterpiece. It's not light viewing, nor is it really designed for your average audience to watch for fun. Rather, it's a deeply thoughtful, philosophical, and emotional movie, and one that I happily recommend to anyone who is willing to invest the time necessary to understand it.